you can do anything if you can speak well, communicate well. Truly, whether it's landing an incredible new job, having better relationships with people outside of work, whatever it is. But working on this skill will pay dividends forever. It is an incredible investment, and the results that I see from people, that's why I do it. This is a people business. Speakwell's method of marketing is word of mouth.
That's the best
not
way.
invested a red cent into a Facebook ad or whatever. And I think that's a testament to how powerful it can be.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the Gathering Podcast. Again, as always, I'm the same person, Kasim Verji, here in the studio at StartWell on King Street West. And today for the 17th episode of Gathering, I'm joined with Jordyn Benattar from Speakwell.
Thanks for having me.
Great name.
Thank you.
Both of yours and the company.
Speakwell, StartWell.
Do everything well and then whatever. Live well, be well.
The world is your oyster.
So, Jordyn, tell me about Speakwell. What does Speakwell do?
Speakwell is a public speaking and communications coaching, consulting, and training firm, and transforming people into world-class communicators who own the room.
I like this. So, okay, and we're going to peel back the onion on your history and how it has evolved into this work. And the level of expertise with which you kind of engage your clientele. So let's go way back to the 70s. Maybe not the 70s. Yeah, back to when you started working as a child.
Yes. My first job was being a child actor. So I actually started acting in 1996, and I started with commercials. I think I did 5 commercials and then moved on to...
Like TV commercials?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shoppers Drug Mart, TD Bank. I think I did a Volvo car commercial. And then...
But you weren't driving?
Definitely not.
Okay.
I was a great car seat model. And then it evolved into acting in film and TV. And honestly, it was the best experience. I had so much fun on set. I wanted to do it way more than my parents allowed me to.
How did they get you into this, though? Because I know my daughter's like 4.5. I'm sure she would be like, she loves being on sets. She's been in our studio and stuff, and like running around in lights and things. But yeah, was it something that they thought was just fun to do, or was it more like
not at all? I think
okay.
So
it was work. It was business.
The audience can't see how petite I am, but I was always very, very small.
Okay.
And so at the age of, let's say, 5, and I could read, I could play like 3. Because I was so small. And my doctor, I remember, had told, well, I don't remember, but from the stories that I've been told.
I'm told I remember.
I've been told that I remember this, that I was rambunctious and talkative and mature, and that I would be great in film and TV. So I heard this while apparently he was telling my mother and wouldn't let the idea go. So that evolved into a career for actually quite a long time. I would usually do about a project a year.
Wow.
And it was great. But that's how it started. It started with someone saying, this girl is feisty. She should be on camera. And I loved that idea. And I begged my parents. And
so you were into it as a kid.
I was so into it.
Let me do this.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
My dream at the time was to be on Barney.
Barney?
Yeah.
But the dinosaur? Yeah. The purple dinosaur? How close to getting on the Barney show were you?
Not.
Okay.
No, I was
very far.
No. There were some cool movies that I did, but not Barney level. No.
What, for you, from what you remember, because age-wise, if you were a child actor, like when did you start and when did you stop?
I started, I think I was 3 in commercials, and then moved on to movies when I was 5.
Oh, very young.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
My first movie was, I think it was called Must Be Santa, which is apropos for this time of year.
Absolutely.
And the second movie I did was called What Makes a Family, and that was one of the best, even though I was so young, I actually remember it really vividly. It was the best experience. It was like an all-female cast. It was Brooke Shields, Cherry Jones, Tony Award-winning Broadway actress. We had Ben Stiller's mom play my grandma. Yeah, it was really cool. Whoopi Goldberg played the judge in the movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I loved that experience so much and kind of made it my mission to make it part of my life. And it was pretty fun missing school.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine.
For like 1 or 2 months and getting taught by, I don't know, a tutor on set or whatever for 4 hours a day as opposed to 8.
Well, also because
a sweet deal.
Kids like doing physical things, you know? And like my daughter's really into dance. She's not so much into like, you know, going into like she has a lot of apprehension about going to her like jazz tap dance that we have her in. But as soon as she's there, she loves it.
Right.
So if it's an organized kind of thing, it's like less exciting. But if there's a party, she's gonna jam out, you know? So yeah.
She sounds very cute.
She's cool, yeah.
But those
really cool.
experiences, whether it's performing on stage in a tap show or for me being on set, working with adults, totally shapes who you are as a person. Like those are your formative years. And having that experience absolutely feeds into the approach that I take with Speakwell. I also understand the difference between acting and being yourself, which is what public speaking is all about. And I'm grateful for that because even in unconscious ways, it slips in and shapes the way that I coach people.
Well, it's super interesting because as far as I understand it, then you got in it's not even got in this is not something you like. It's not a pit that you can, you know, fall over into. In an early grave, he was walking in the cemetery. But no, you found yourself years later at the bar.
At the bar. Oh.
As a lawyer.
Yes, as a lawyer. Passed the bar exams and I have not practiced.
Did you ever practice? What stopped you?
No. I was actually working. I was doing when you're in law school, during your, what's it called, a 2L summer. So after your second year of law school, for me, it was actually my 3L summer.
Okay.
Because I did the combined JD MBA program. So it sort of puts you back a year, but saves you a year.
Law and
in the
MBA
long run.
in one thing.
You
Cool.
do it at the same time.
Okay.
And during my 3L summer, I worked at a firm in New York called Skadden. And I loved it. I was there for just 4 months or whatever it is. And at the same time, I had met my now husband.
Hey, mazel tov.
Thank you. He was my boyfriend at the time. And he was back in Toronto and decided, I'm going to move home to Toronto. And when you do that, you have to go through your articles, right? You have to do articling here, which you do not have to do in the U.S. In the US,
there's no articling?
No, you finish law school, you write the bar exams, and you're licensed to practice.
I didn't know that.
Right. So I did my articles at Goodmans, which is a great law firm here in Toronto. And when it was the end of my term, I was like, will I learn something more that is going to be directly applicable to what I want to be doing, which is running Speakwell full-time in the future?
So you already knew that? Mm-hmm. So when did the Speakwell journey start, like formally?
2011, informally.
Oh.
And then formally 2020. So 2011, I was doing Speakwell as a side hustle. I was coaching people who needed communication skills to
Do you
get
remember
jobs, whatever. Yeah.
the first time that you did that? Like there must have been a
Yes.
catalyst for this to propel into kind of a career.
Yeah. If I think even further back, I was a competitive debater and public speaker in high school. And when I stopped, I think it was in 12th grade, when I was no longer competing, I was coaching other students. So just for fun, it felt like a leadership position, and I was coaching people for competitions.
Okay.
So that was, I guess, I really like this, and I'm good at it. People were winning. So then I got to university. I went to Queen's University
Okay.
in Kingston and started doing it also sort of pro bono. People that wanted to get into med school, consulting jobs, interviewing for other types of positions. There was a pitch competition I remember that I coached somebody for because I saw the gap between how smart they were and how they were communicating. And there was a lag. So they weren't achieving the goal even though they had all the credentials and qualifications to get themselves in the room or 1 foot in. But in order to seal the deal or really achieve whatever the goal is that they had in mind, they really needed to amplify their communication skills. So I started doing that, and every single person that I coached got what they wanted.
Wow.
And I was like,
And people were
There's
just
something here.
gravitating to you. They were like at that time they were just gravitating. to
it
you.
started just word of mouth.
Right.
Yeah. So one person would get into med school and then tell all their friends, you need to work with Jordyn. She is how I was able, like some people would get interviews and not get in. And I'm like, what happened? We need to fix that because you're clearly smart enough to get into med school. They've seen your grades, they've seen your resume, whatever. And I'd say that's not the bulk of my practice today, coaching people to get into med school.
Sure, yeah.
Although I did have 2 students last year.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But that was the start.
Okay.
And that's where I noticed, and you asked how Speakwell started formally. My client base continued to grow on a part-time. I was doing a part-time side hustle, like I said. And year after year, I guess just continually through word of mouth. And I continued my other pursuits too. Like I did a semester abroad in New York, which is not really abroad, but whatever. It wasn't Kingston. Law school, business school. I kept it up.
Yeah.
And then when the decision came of whether I wanted to be a lawyer, practice law every single day, I was like, the time to go with my gut is now.
Right.
Before, I don't know, I worried that I was going to get either pigeonholed or I wasn't going to learn anything that was going to help me in the future. And I also, my biggest fear is like having regrets. And I was like, I don't want to regret not trying.
It's a great way to live life, is to like not want to have regrets.
Yeah. And
It's
I don't think I do.
Great thing to drive decision making. It's just like, is this something that's really what I believe in, or I feel like I just have to do it because of other people or whatever. Yeah. So that's great. So then you kind of like double down on yourself and your own thing.
And I'm on my clients, really.
Right.
Yeah. I'm able now to give them undivided attention. My client base has grown. Speakwell's grown by 450% this year.
Wow.
Alone. Yeah. It's wild.
So what are the types of customers that you now work with?
It's pretty broad still. Okay. There's the odd medical school student or person who's trying to get a particular specialty in their fellowship or whatever. It was funny how that thread of medicine has continued. But it's a lot of...
Yeah, well, because like medical professionals are terrible at articulation.
They're very technical.
Not all of them, they're great at communicating with each other. They're great at it. But yeah, I'm biased. My wife is a doctor, you see, so this is where
okay,
this
so
is
this comes from a place of love.
Oh, 100%. I'm not hating on the medical profession. No, and like all her friends who are doctors, they like have a great time talking to each other, and they crack jokes about medicine and all this stuff. And but I see how when even in that profession, you have conferences, you have, whether it's like IRL or online, you have even like there was one thing that she was engaged with the other day where there was like the Ontario Medical Association is hosting these kind of like town halls, virtual town halls, and great speakers, and they were really rallying the opinion to be able to take to Capitol Hill, we call it, right? In Canada, and wherever, Queen's Park in Ontario, like the politicians. And it's painful to watch that from over her shoulder and see how it kind of, because of the, let's say, lack of experience maybe that medical professionals have in vocalizing their frustrations or their larger thoughts about the profession and institutions they work with, there seems to be a kind of lack of voice they collectively can, wield. And so you see these implications.
Totally.
Of
And
this.
I mean, they're not alone. There are so many professions that are extremely technical and ridden with jargon and very difficult to explain things in simple terms and persuasively as well, because that's not how they were trained. Right. But I have worked with, as we ascend through the medical career, everyone from students to the head of a hospital in Montreal, for example, is a client of mine. So, but to go back to your original question being what comprises your practice, it's 50-50 between private clients and corporations.
Okay.
The private clients oftentimes are either C-suites, so executives, leaders, CEOs, COOs, and then also up-and-coming, high-potential, very promising leaders who are really trying to take it to the next level in their careers. And then in terms of organizations, it's something small like a startup all the way to Fortune 500 companies. I work with leaders at Merck, Comcast, securities exchanges. I've worked with judges, although that's more on the individual side. So it's pretty vast and broad and diverse. But the one thing that everybody has in common is that they want to hone their leadership skills, they want to articulate themselves more effectively, and they want to sound smart.
It's so interesting because like there's this narrative in even this series, as we continue talking to people who support teams and people who support ultimately people in business, a large part of, I think, dysfunction in business comes from the inability for people to communicate. And business is very much grounded in communication, is something I've always believed. But if you look at larger organizations, one thing that we're hearing right now is a lot of disconnection that, you know, employees are feeling. Part of that being this like embrace of hybrid realities, remote work, work at home, the digital disconnect. And I think, well, let me put it on you on that topic. How have you been working with clients recently in the last few years to bridge those gaps? You know, the idea of kind of speaking beyond the medium. How people can project themselves through, you know, in whichever forum they're communicating.
Right. So there's two parts to communication. There's what you say and there's how you say it. And there's a very heavy focus on the how you say it portion generally, but particularly in terms of, okay, how do we adapt to our medium? So for example, we're on video today. That means that not all of the focus has to be on my voice, but when you're on the phone, you need to channel all of your emotion and your enthusiasm and all of the things that you're trying to express in the tone through your voice. But here I have facial expressions at my disposal. I have hand gestures. I have posture to, I don't know, communicate something.
Yeah.
But
what does your posture say about
you're
you?
not going to be hunched over the table, whatever it is.
Damn low microphone. Making
usually
me look
the microphone
terrible.
is too high for me. So this is nice. But the medium is really, really important in terms of shaping your communication and also the way that you engage people.
Right.
So if it's a webinar style, for example, where you don't get any feedback from your audience, you can't even see your audience, how do you handle that? It's going to be a little bit different than when the Zoom chat is super active and you can see people on the other side and you can actually see all of them, which is different than when you're in person and you probably can't see the face and the reaction of the person seated at the back of the auditorium, right? But on Zoom, you can actually usually see how people are taking to your information. So medium is key for both what you say, like how you engage people, and how you say it.
And it's interesting because then there's a other thing, like the kind of context of communication in business also seems to be changing, whereby the politics in organizations are getting, I don't know, there's lots of like new factors that people keep raising on this series about things like how you manage churn and the reason for why churn is becoming an issue. And what I mean by that is employee tenure at companies going from what historically was 10, 20 years of career at a company down to whatever. And then someone just a couple episodes was telling us, a recruiting specialist was telling us they're expecting people to be placed for 2.5 years in their roles. 2.5 years. And then, of course, a lot of people in startups are telling us that's 6 months. So people are kind of looking to piece out from their job anywhere, let's call it from 2 to 3 years, and they come into a job with the expectation that they will leave it. So it's interesting because if, you know, the workplace is really about kind of forming relationships and then teamwork and relying on other people, there's these larger trust issues if, you know, churn is such a big part of corporate culture in the next decade ahead. What's your take on that topic in relation to how people are communicating?
Well, because I don't work at a huge organization,
Yeah.
president of Speakwell, I feel like I'm actually not qualified to answer that question. Also, having worked at a law firm where a lot of people, their goal is to become a partner and
Right.
they're there for the long haul.
It's the ladder, man. You got to climb that ladder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I never saw myself as being someone to jump from one career to the next, but I do see myself as someone who is multi-passionate and has lots of projects on the go. So I guess I'm able to explore my various interests through projects within Speakwell, whether it's like the private coaching or the workshops or whatever. But to go back to your question about churn and turnover, I think communication is key. Emboldening your people to be leaders at any level, whether they've just started and they're an intern, they should be given all of the resources in the world to see themselves there for the long term. And honestly, that's like the biggest competitive advantage for businesses these days is how do we hold on to talent? Because people are everything.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you saw ChatGPT. That coming out is like, that's scary.
ChatGPT.
That can take care of a lot of jobs.
Pause on that for a second.
Which is
ChatGPT.
fascinating, amazing, so cool.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that relationships, people are everything. And how do we hold on to that is really through communication.
Mm-hmm.
How do you articulate the hard stuff to your boss? How do you negotiate your salary? How do you explore what your career options are within an organization? Maybe you're not happy in your current role, but that doesn't mean you wouldn't be elated to be in a different one.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work with teams? How do you manage people? How do you manage up? How do you manage down? And it all boils down to how you articulate yourself. And then there's ripple effects of that too, right? Your credibility, your reputation within the organization, and also beyond the organization.
Right.
Because companies are so people-facing these days. We want to see people's personalities come out. And the best way to do that is through communicating, whether that's written or oral.
Yeah, and yeah, of course, something at StartWell that we do a lot is video. We produce video about everything. And it's becoming something that companies are coming to us for. And it's now something, of course, that is functionally possible through LinkedIn. And it's another theme that's coming out in this series, which is, organizations are reconsidering how to enable the voices of their people through whatever platform they want to. And a lot of it is on LinkedIn. Like a lot of companies are saying, we would love to have our staff be able to represent us on LinkedIn. There's a collective kind of hiring function there.
Totally. I've heard this from my friends. They're like, my boss is asking me to post on LinkedIn and be an evangelist for our organization. So I hear what you're saying, and I see it too.
Yeah, you see it. As LinkedIn becomes a social network, you hope that the workplace becomes more social as well. And it's less about managing the fear of people spending time on LinkedIn looking for other jobs. And instead being like, hey, no, this is a professional network where, there are opportunities for company-to-company relationship being formed. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so let's talk about what you do practically.
Okay.
How does it like I'm your client? Let's say
lucky me.
Let's say StartWell, like the company. Okay, I say I've got 5 staff. Blah 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 blah. This is what we do. We need help communicating.
Okay.
I mean, whatever the context is
Right.
that people come to you with. Like how I guess everyone has a different problem. It might be, especially on the personal angle, but even companies. Like, is it
Totally.
is it specifically leaders coming to you saying, I'm having difficulty with this, or is it HR professionals coming to you saying our whole team needs to work better at communicating?
It's both.
Okay.
So when it comes to I'll start with the corporate side because that's what you led with.
Mm-hmm.
When an organization approaches me, it's usually through the top, right? It's probably the CEO or someone on that level.
Yep.
Or it's the HR professional, like
Okay.
the chief of people and culture, the head of HR, whatever it is. And we hop on a call without a time limit, and we explore absolutely everything that's going on. And everything is, of course, confidential. And we talk about what success would look like for them in the future if all of their people could speak well, and what are the parts that they need to enhance? What are the parts that really need refining and improvement? And maybe it's being on the same page about the corporate message.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's about teamwork and communicating internally with each other. Maybe it's about persuasive storytelling, like using the power of story to really persuade people to do something, to think in a certain way, to behave in a certain way. Maybe it's about motivating and inspiring your teams to get on board with an initiative that maybe wasn't accepted when we initially introduced it, something like that, because we're living in this crazy time of change.
Right, absolutely.
Right, whether it's coming back to the office or introducing a new product or service or ending a product or service, whatever it is. Or maybe it's just communication 101 and people suck at communicating and they need help with everything from email etiquette to giving constructive feedback that launches people forward. So we talk about all of that, and then they'll take a look at Speakwell's workshop menu.
Okay.
And there are tons of different options there, as well as a custom option, which is fantastic. We build it specifically for you and your organization. And then we pick a date and time. I get all the contact information of everyone who's going to be there, the types of people that they are. It's a very, very tailored experience to the organization. Everything from the content that's included in the workshop, as well as the physical workbooks that they receive and actually keep and probably reuse many, many times after the workshop.
And these workshops are primarily done in person or remotely, or?
It's half and half now.
Okay.
And it's been great to be in person, both here in Toronto. I'm going to New York in a couple weeks. Like, it's exciting to be back
traveling
face to face. Exactly. Yeah. But a lot of the stuff is virtual as well. So really no limit on that. And of course, the workbooks would just be digital and fillable and reusable there.
So let's say they engage you and now it's time for the workshop, first workshop. What kind of stuff can teams expect from your workshops? What do they do when they're there?
Learning by doing, firstly. Second, bringing all of the experience that I have, whether it's acting on camera or it's thinking persuasively as a lawyer or constructing arguments or structuring your speaking points to be coherent, concise, compelling, moving. Maybe it's working on anxiety around public speaking, whatever it is. Every single workshop has tangible takeaways and also opportunities to practice those skills in real time, because if you don't practice and I just lecture at you for 3 hours,
then it's just in one ear,
exactly.
out the other. So a lot of it sounds like a lot of it is kind of very much like improv class. Like, are there situations? Like, people have to act through situations?
Yes. Okay. However, the one thing I would say, maybe it's different from improv class in the sense that you are being yourself. There is the role that you are playing is not like role play of being somebody else. You are being your authentic, best self. And they try these things in real time. They receive constructive feedback. And usually the feedback that I receive is, oh my gosh, we didn't know our people had it in them. Like, wow, this is going to change our organization forever.
So you kind of found, this is the way I hear that. It sounds like that kind of artifice in business which may be based on assumption about role playing and how people kind of don't communicate but communicate. Judy, how was your weekend? Oh, it was so good. I took the kids to the mountain. We went skiing. Oh, that's great. All right, let's go work. That isn't necessarily, an honest kind of like catch up.
Right. Well, that's listening to reply and then get to work. It's not listening for the sake of actually listening and connecting.
Right.
So there's a difference there. But anyway, what they get out of it is really there's tangible change and measurable change as well, which is why oftentimes we'll also do it as a series. Like, an organization will say, okay, these are the 4 skills that we want to build within our people. By the end of 2023, we want our people to be equipped to do A, B, C, D. Let's do a quarterly workshop to master all of them. And that's how it goes.
I love it.
Yeah.
So looking at 2023 ahead in a minute, what is ahead for you for Speakwell? Is there a change or any, alteration in how you're offering what you're doing to the market, things that you are looking forward to next year?
Yes. Firstly, so many exciting workshops coming up. I'm currently booking private clients now for March 2023 because January and February are already full, which is really cool. And the private client experience is going to be different. Everything is going to be significantly more streamlined, almost like when you're using a really cool app like Peloton or something like that, where you can communicate, you can measure your growth. There's a lot of shared, and from a tech perspective, I guess that's the part that fascinates me. But in terms of my bread and butter, which is really helping people own the room, level up in terms of their leadership, that's the stuff that stays the same.
Right.
And I mean, I'm obviously continuing to grow and I learn so much from my clients all the time. So what's in store for 2023? I could say a tech upgrade on the individual side, expanding the workshop menu on the corporate side. Also, the possibility of building a community of a really safe place for everybody to practice their public speaking skills.
I like that.
Less archaic version of Toastmasters, essentially. Well, so stay tuned.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I can't say too much about that.
When you can, you should say it here.
Will you have me back?
I will have you back. In fact, in April, we're doing this 2-day conference. And if, stars align, then we can have you present. That would be fantastic. I'm sure our audience
That'd be great.
would love that.
Yeah, I would love that.
It's a 2-day conference. We're going to have, as of now, we've got 200 people registered in downtown Toronto. If registrations keep going, then we may change venue, but the plan is to do it one day, kind of stage and interaction. Second day, a lot of workshops the whole day, and then people present the output of those workshops back on stage to the whole audience.
Wow.
So it's a real hands-on 2 days. At the end of it, you'll have 200 friends, that are peers. So it's a really exciting kind of thing.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
I hope
cool.
they bring it with their public speaking skills.
Yeah, well, we can work together on that.
Okay.
You can help them.
With executive presence and all that, we'll do an executive presence Speakwell workshop.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Awesome. Well, it was wicked having you in the studio.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah, absolutely. It was awesome to hear about what you're doing, because I think a lot of people, I hope, who are listening will realize through this conversation that in their own organizations, there's a lot of opportunity for improvement in how they communicate.
It's true. I'll end with, I want to just, anyone who's listening, to feel like you can do anything if you can speak well, communicate well. Truly, whether it's landing an incredible new job, having better relationships with people outside of work, whatever it is. But working on this skill will pay dividends forever. It is an incredible investment, and the results that I see from people, that's why I do it. This is a people business. This is Speakwell's method of marketing is word of mouth.
That's the best
not
way.
invested a red cent into a Facebook ad or whatever. And I think that's a testament to how powerful it can be to
Absolutely.
transform people's careers. So I want people to know that you have it in you. You can do anything.
Yay.
If public speaking makes you nervous, there's a way out.
Yeah, and I think, part of that, at least for me, an end note, is that often cases you think everything's cool, but
you don't even know. You don't have the consciousness to know.
Yeah. You're still not sure. Did you ask for everything you wanted? Did you actually, it was a great interaction with someone, but did you get what you wanted out of it?
Totally.
At least in business, it's always like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks once again.
That's
it was
a wrap.
pleasure. Yeah, it's a wrap.
Thanks, Kasim.
Yeah, pleasure.